all right? Something's coming. What? I don't know. I don't know.
We are talking about Voices. This one directed and co-written by Nathaniel Newon and stars Valerie Jane Parker, Leslie Easterbrook and Jordan Ladd. This is not to be confused with the similar titled The Voices, also from 2020. This is the problem you run into when you have a generic sounding movie. So this one is a, I'll call it a horror film, but it's not a lot. There's not really horror elements to it. But it is a supernatural, almost like a Lifetime drama movie in a way. And it focuses on this young woman called Lilly, who was blinded in an accident when she was quite young. And she's not completely blind, but she can barely see, essentially. She's very, more or less blind, but can see kind of like light and things like that. But she has also the ability to communicate with the dead, although she doesn't often realise that she's talking to essentially ghosts because she can't actually see them. And it essentially takes place over 3 time periods and deals a lot of the time, to be honest with you, with just her day-to-day life and how she's kind of dealing with this. But we have 2 sort of concurrent threats kind of running against her life. One threat is kind of the supernatural, and this is she ends up becoming pregnant in her kind of like most adult stage, and we learn that these various kind of spirits want to infest the baby to be kind of reborn again. We don't really know why specifically it's her, or if this happens to everyone. We just kind of have this rambling woman who is meant to be a medium. So, oh yeah, you're very special. We don't really know why that is or what the circumstances of that. But anyway, so we have all these kind of like these spirits. And there is one particularly dark spirit that wants entry, shall we say. We also have more of a terrestrial threat where there seems to be a serial killer that is kind of abducting kids and doing things with them, or maybe sort of selling them in the black market. Again, it's not particularly clear because it says that this killer both kills people and it's made out that they sort of sell them on. So again, not very well defined. You may be seeing where this movie is going to be going in a minute. Anyway, and that's kind of your plot. Let's talk about what works. Okay, I can say this about this film. It has its heart in the right place. You want this... The director and co-writer here clearly want to have, an uplifting movie in a lot of ways and have a kind of a sense of hopefulness. And that does come through. Because we do feel that, there's kind of like a guardian angel type thing kind of going on. And the movie is never really particularly dark, even when it's dealing with dark subject matter, like these kind of serial killers, for example. It's never particularly, it's never gory in the slightest at all. There are a couple of kind of ghostly special effects and stuff, and maybe a couple of, a bit of blood here and there on kind of the ghosts, but nothing really I would consider horrific. This kind of movie is the sort of thing that you would, it's going to be a supernatural movie that you can play in the afternoon, and mum can watch it whilst, the kids are at school, that kind of stuff. I did find some of the cast quite likeable. I kind of quite like their characters. Lily herself, although there's some problems with this, which we'll come on to. Even in all 3 kind of like iterations of her kind of timeline here, I found her kind of a likeable character. I think I probably like the teenage sort of timeline the best. I felt that had the characters were the most interesting then. Although ironically, that's probably the least amount of time that stuff happens really, in regards to kind of supernatural stuff or anything else really. But I kind of quite like the teenage shenanigans to a certain degree. I thought that had the best sort of scenes here. And the kind of this romance that she has with this kind of like this boy and all of this. But to be honest with you, this movie has a lot of cards stacked against it. It's too long for a start. This movie does not need to be this long. it could have had 15, 20 minutes chopped off and made it a lot more punchy movie. I'm sad to say the acting in this movie is nearly all quite bad. To the point where I wonder if it's the actors and maybe it's the director just giving poor direction here. Because it's almost universally bad acting. And there's quite a big cast here. Again, we're going to come on to that. But yeah, some of the acting, some of the line delivery, well, pretty much all of the line delivery is quite, sometimes even painful to listen to. And the dialogue is so trite. You know, it just doesn't feel like real people are going to be saying these things. The movie is so confusing in regards to, it was to tell the story in a kind of a non-linear fashion. You have 3 time periods, and it often flashes back between different time periods without you even realising it to a certain degree. I don't think it helps that the casting here, the characters look nothing like their older counterparts. For example, the teenage Lilly looks like she's about 8 foot tall. She's like the girl that they've got playing her is massively tall, but when she's adult, she kind of just looks kind of about average height, to be honest. Things like this. The boyfriend looks nothing like the kind of, you know, the adult version of him. And, you know, the casting here, I've got to say, it looks like they've just had a very small sample size, let me put it like that. But again, because you have all of these characters essentially times 3 in 3 different time periods, and the movie doesn't really, it just kind of literally just snaps into a kind of a flashback, and you don't realise you're watching it, and it becomes a really convoluted mess for some, you know, basically down to some quite poor editing. There should have been more of an attempt here to differentiate the different time periods, be it different transitions or kind of like lighting, camera angles, things like that. Or, to be honest with you, the easiest one would be to have it told in a linear fashion. I feel if you're gonna tell a movie in a non-linear fashion, you have to be a very good storyteller, and I'm afraid that isn't the case here. And the movie comes across as, it's not impossible to follow, because there's not really a lot that happens, to be brutally honest with you, but there's a lot of fluff in this movie. But it's just so poorly put together. The movie feels convoluted when the actual plot, to be honest with you, is more or less pretty simple. The supernatural element here as well seems unnecessary. To be honest, I mean, it honestly doesn't have that big of an impact on this story. You know, in an actual fact, you can strip out the kind of the supernatural elements really, and the story would have more or less played out as is. It's just a bit of a mess, this film. It has no real teeth. It's not even really trying to be a horror film per se. It's not scary. There's no real scary element in it. It's like a Lifetime style kind of drama movie. I think, you know, it has some kind of nice elements to it. The film has, like I've said, a good heart, and I think it's trying to promote a positive message and trying to kind of like have, you know, someone who is less abled in the lead. But I've got to be honest with you, the actors playing this blind person is not doing a good job of acting like they're blind. You can clearly see, you know, her eyes kind of darting around when she's looking at things and stuff like that. You know, to me, this movie honestly was a little bit of a mess. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. There are a couple of okay special effects moments, and I think the message of the movie is, you know, is pleasant. I'm tempted to give it 3, but I'll give it a 4 because of that. But honestly, it's not a particularly interesting film. This needed to have more people, I think, or a producer saying to this director, rein it in a little bit, have a little bit more kind of like, have a concise story. You know, you're not experienced enough to tell a non-linear story. You need to kind of, you know, baby steps, training wheels. So, yeah, not a particularly thrilling movie by any stretch of the imagination. Poorly titled. I mean, such a generic name, you know. It's going to get lost in searches. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.